Oh boy, okay, this is going to be a bit of a doozy of a review to do, because I'm going to warn you now, I have some mixed feelings. Hey everybody, this is TUSDarryl, and welcome to my review of Resident Evil 3 Remake. Let's get the ball rolling by jumping into the story. Step in the boots of a freshly suspended from stars Jill Valentine, as she races through Raccoon City in another zombie outbreak unlike anything she experienced at the Spencer Mansion in Resident Evil 1. Joined by the gold-hearted flirt, Carlos Oliveira, Jill looks for answers as to what is happening in Raccoon City as the city literally tears itself apart. And while she's looking for answers over there, I'm going to look at the graphics over here. It looked good. It looked real good. This is the one department I honestly figured was a given, since Capcom seems to really know how to flex their RE Engine's muscles and make everything look drop dead gorgeous. The game very rarely has any moments when it looks downright ugly, outside of a couple textures that don't load in as quickly as others for a moment. And even if you do run into some of those issues, there's a plethora of options to choose from to get Resident Evil 3 Remake looking as best as it possibly can for your machine. Now let's keep an ear out for the sound. Don't want to get bitten.
I think we're in the clear.
Hope so.
We've been bringing survivors here.
Here where?
My guys have converted some subway cars into a shelter. It's safe.
I'm fine.
Personal space. Okay, I get it. Let's go.
Once again, Capcom knocks these sounds out of the park. Unlike Resident Evil 2 Remake, where a lot of the time the sounds you hear are meant to build up dread in places like the police station, where you spend a decent chunk of the game, Resident Evil 3 Remake takes the more action movie approach with bangs, crashes, booms, and gunfire. Every sound is spaced out in a way where you won't really get confused as to which direction Nemesis is running at you from. For me, there was no moment in the game where I felt as though the sound felt flat or things could have sounded better. Keeping an ear out for the music. No, that's just screaming. Never mind. Moving on to gameplay. Okay. Overall, if you've played Resident Evil 2 Remake, then you should know what to expect with this game. That said, knife durability has been removed, meaning you can stab as much as you want, but the knife you have is pretty weak in comparison to the knives in Resident Evil 2 Remake, which makes sense to me for balancing reasons, but figured it was worth mentioning. However, one thing that really irritated me a lot during my playthrough of Resident Evil 3 Remake is that you can no longer fight out of a grab. Once you're grabbed, that's it. You get munched. If you button mash. If you don't button mash, you'll get munched more. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, if you got grabbed and you had a grenade or a knife on you, or an extra knife or whatever, you could use it to stab or shove the grenade into the mouth of an enemy, and then just they'll back off, you back off, they blow up, or they just get stunned for a little bit, you know? There was a risk factor in having that much gear, that many weapons and whatnot on you, because on the one hand, you were prepared for most fights, but on the other hand, if you used them all in a fight, you didn't have anything to defend yourself with if you got grabbed. Or if you used them whenever you got grabbed, then when you have the rare moment in Resident Evil 2 Remake when you had a fight on your hands, then you had nothing to really work with outside of your gun and your wits. Here, there's none of that. You get grabbed and, well, that's it. If your health is too low when you get grabbed next time, then that's curtains. You're dead. Yay, I guess. That was a layer to the gameplay of Resident Evil 2 Remake that I really enjoyed. That was removed here in favor of a dodge mechanic, which is great and all. I'm assuming, I mean, I can really only assume that that's why the fighting out of a grab is no longer in the game, because you can just dodge now. And that if you can't get past an enemy with your dodge, you're punished by getting grabbed. And okay, that's all well and good, but at least in my playthrough, dodging past regular enemies was really easy. So most of the time I didn't really have to fight unless I felt like it, or unless I knew I was going to come through there a lot and I didn't want to deal with it. It's ultimately a step down from the gameplay that we got in Resident Evil 2 Remake. On another note, the game isn't very long, and this is the biggest point of contention for most people. Being grabbed is being grabbed, whatever. The game's sequels change gameplay mechanics all the time. Fine. But if your game isn't long enough to warrant a $60 price tag, then you got a different problem on your hands. Now, I will preface this by saying, if you're someone like me that will play through the game 2 or 3 times, it's not as big of an issue. Especially if you're someone who also really loves Project Resistance, then there's really no problem at all, at least not in my mind. However, for the general populace and those who are not interested in the multiplayer mode, like me, I didn't even really bother playing it, because I just wasn't interested in it. If you want to see a review on that, I'm sure there are other videos out there, but I really wanted to focus on the core reason why I bought Resident Evil 3 Remake. And it was for Resident Evil 3 Remake, not for Project Resistance. Sorry, almost went on a minute. Coming back to the point. If you're not interested in the multiplayer mode and you don't intend to play through the game more than once, then the game is roughly 6 hours to complete. That's it. There is some replayability if you want to use points you can acquire throughout the game to unlock some decent items in the shop that you unlock after beating the game once, but that's not going to win many people over in comparison to playing a whole other route like in Resident Evil 2 Remake that gave you a whole different perspective, well, most of a different perspective on the story, and gave you some new gameplay thrown in there and a couple new areas. You know, there was some cool stuff thrown in there. They could have, in my opinion, done that here too. I know that the original third game didn't have a second route or anything like that, but it did have the live selection mechanic, which is not here in Resident Evil 3 Remake. You starting to see the problem here? For those who don't know, the live selection mechanic that was in the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis allowed the player to make different decisions and cutscenes and whatnot that would ultimately change events throughout the story, which is one of the reasons why you would replay the game. Not to mention that now might have been a good time to consider fleshing out at least Carlos's portion of the game a bit more, so it felt more like what you got in Resident Evil 2 Remake when you played it as either Leon or Claire. Now would have been a good time to do it. There were even portions of the original Resident Evil 3 that didn't make it into the remake. Now, I'm all for reimagining. I understand that, you know, whenever a game is remade, sometimes what was in the old game isn't going to make it in the remake. Personally, when I buy a remake, I don't expect to play the same game twice with the same progression. I expect changes. I expect new locations. Maybe old locations get scrapped. But the problem is the locations that used to be in the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis that I haven't played and would have liked to play in this version are just not here. Nope, not here. There were also very little puzzles to really do in the game. Now, personally, again, for me, does it bother me that much that this stuff didn't make it into the remake? In a way, no. What bothers me is that they weren't really replaced by anything that's substantial or replaced at all, is what bothers me. If we had something like Mercenaries mode that was in the original Resident Evil 3, which I hear was really awesome, then the $60 price point would seem a little more acceptable. I played something similar to the Mercenaries mode back with Resident Evil, was it Resident Evil Revelations 2 or something like that? They had a raid mode, and I heard it functioned similar to Mercenaries, if not just watered down. But heck, even having something like that would have been cool, but not there. My problem with Resident Evil 3 is not that it's a bad game. As much crap as I just gave it, it's a really good game. It's just mispriced. If it was $30, we're talking. If it was $20, hey, I don't mind. But you're asking full price for a game where a lot of the things that made the original good aren't in it. And then you also added a multiplayer mode to try and justify the $60. And even then, if I wanted to play Dead by Daylight, I'd boot up Dead by Daylight. No one asked for Project Resistance. If people love Project Resistance, fine. Then those people, they're fine. I'm not going to hate on Project Resistance because, again, I haven't played it. But I only cared about Resident Evil 3 Remake. And it just feels like there was a lot of stuff that was not in there that could have been. So ultimately, the only problem that I have with Resident Evil 3 Remake is it needs more. It needs to be fleshed out more. If you're going to take things that were in the original game and not put them in the remake, you need to put something that is of the equivalent value in there. And I don't mean that in the form of a multiplayer mode. I mean into the main story. If you want to add Project Resistance to it, by all means. But that main meat of the game, the one that the thing that everyone wants to play and bought the game for, that needs to be better. That needed to be better. I've gone off script and had to re-record some of these things I've said several times because I was rambling so much trying to really get my thoughts out there on it because I didn't think I could reiterate it enough. But if it made sense to you, great. If not, then I'll sum it up here. Resident Evil 3 Remake is a caution, not an avoid. Don't get me wrong. I've played games that I would tell people to straight up avoid. But Resident Evil 3 Remake is a caution. While Resident Evil 3 Remake is a very fun experience in its own right, the game doesn't have enough content to warrant a $60 price tag, unless you think you'd really enjoy the Project Resistance multiplayer mode. That said, the game is still loads of fun despite how short it is. If you're the type of person who will play it more than once for the items in the shop you unlock at the end of the game, then by all means, buy it. If you think you only play it once, then I can't recommend it at full price. I just can't. If you see it on sale for $30, heck no. 25 or lower, 20 is a sweet spot for me. Then by all means pick it up. This is one of those weird cases where I'm torn. Part of me thinks maybe I should give it an avoid, but I can't because I didn't hate the game. The game itself, I don't give numbered scores, but if I were to give it a numbered score for the game itself, for what's there, 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10. I don't give numbered scores, but if I were to give it a score, 6 out of 10. Because what's there is good. It's just not enough. And now that Capcom is apparently working on Resident Evil 4 Remake, which they apparently started before Resident Evil 2 Remake, I'm hoping that game has a lot more meat on its bones. Because that's all this game really needed. It just needed the meat. You can make your alterations to the story. You can swap things around, but it needed meat, ultimately. If any zombie's trying to pick at this game for a meal, it's gonna go hungry. And with that, I'm TUSDarryl. Hope you guys have enjoyed your stay. See you next time.